Welcome to Muscle Shoals Storyteller Series. We have with us Ronnie Eades of the Muscle Shoals Horns. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure for you to be here. It just lined up. You happened to be in town for a few days, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to come down here and me ask you a few questions. So,
Great. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. I've been wanting to try and get as many members of the Muscle Shoals Horns on this podcast as possible. I really wish my co-host, Dan Williams, could be here. I messaged him yesterday and was like, dude, if you can get down here, please do. He's a trumpet player.
Okay.
He would really nerd out.
Yeah.
You know,
There's three of us left. Harrison passed away just a few weeks after we got inducted into the Alabama Hall of Fame.
Harrison Calloway, right?
Harrison Calloway, yeah. We were getting ready to sign with Tommy Couch and Wolf with Malico when that happened, and that sort of put a damper on us, getting another album out, and they wanted to do a documentary for the Library of Congress, I think, or something, Smithsonian, something like that. And,
right. It seems like I remember that.
After that happened, they said they'd rather have the four, and it just sort of put a damper on everything.
Oh, really? Wow.
But that really hurt us. That was unexpected when Harrison passed away. And, after working with these guys for so many years, it's just like family, losing one of your family members. And
absolutely,
we did go down there to the hospital in Jackson to see him. We went in there, and he was, sort of in a coma, and got his hand. Harrison, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Squeeze our hand. He squeezed our hand, but he couldn't do anything, and
that's sad.
We had to let him go.
Man. Well, I mean, you mentioned about being basically family. I mean, you know how it is much more than I do. We were just talking about before we started recording how I just turned 34 and you're approaching
78.
Right on. That's
I'm running.
Awesome.
I ain't approaching. I'm almost there.
Well, hey, that's awesome. And I say that to say this, you've been doing this way longer than I have. And yeah, it's family. I mean, people that I have worked with for 3 or 4 years have become family to me.
Oh, yeah.
So I can only imagine 30, 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
Or longer, really. Because you guys started in what, 60?
67.
I was going to say 68. So I knew it was somewhere late 60s.
67, 68.
Yeah. So, man, that's a long time.
It is a long time.
And you spend long hours very often. You guys were on the road. You would travel. You didn't just do all of your sessions here.
No, we worked.
Right.
Well, for a while. It's all right. I'll tell you my first session, how I got up here in the first place. Papa Don Schroeder, he was a DJ, and he'd already been cutting some records. He was in Pensacola, and I was working with a group called the Esquires, Sherwood and the Esquires in Pensacola. Myself, Barry Beckett, some other guys. Don wanted to cut these two guys that he found, and he wanted to come to Muscle Shoals. And I said, Don, where is that at? Because I'd never heard of it down there. He said, well, we're going to fly up and we're going to do it. He said, I got some songs I want to cut. So he flew me, Barry, and another guy that was working with us, Doc Bailey, up to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, up here. We cut the first hit record that I had ever played on was I'm Your Puppet, James and Bobby Purify. And I played tenor on it. And David Hood, one of the Swampers, nobody hardly ever believes it.
He on trombone?
He played trombone.
Yeah.
He played trombone on that, Grant.
I had a joy talking with him. He's on 3 episodes, by the way. We had 2 interviews and split it up just for time into 3 separate episodes. And that's one of the things that we talked about was playing trombone and how that has influenced his playing. And ironically enough, the reason I asked that question was I'm friends with quite a few bass players who started out on trombone.
Wow.
That seems to be a thing. I don't know why. It just is.
Yeah. And one of these stories that I heard, he played trombone better than he did bass. He had to learn how to play bass when they made him a bass player, I think.
He's a great bass player, too. I've never heard him play trombone, but I can only imagine. I mean, it makes sense.
I think the trumpet player was Jack Peck, if I remember.
Okay.
Remember right.
So Spooner Oldham, I'm Your Puppet.
Yeah,
Was
Spooner,
Dan Panico right on that also?
he was. Yeah, Dan
Yeah.
was. And Dan was the engineer, matter of fact.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There.
I forgot about that.
Yep, Dan was the engineer.
And that was cut at
Fame. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At Fame. You know, the little bell things on there, I played those too. I'd never played those before.
Oh, wow. That's interesting because that's, to me, the hook of the song.
I know. I never played them.
I mean, that's that ding, 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 ding. I can't do the melody, but it's what you remember. Makes it playful.
It does. It makes it sound like a puppet kind of.
Yeah, it has that whole thing about it. It fits the lyric. That's my favorite part of that song.
Dan found the little bell hour things that we used and we set it on a table, and we couldn't find the mallets. I guess they'd put up, locked up or something. We couldn't find it. So we had a little bottle opener, little metal.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've wondered how you got it to sound that bright.
It was a metal bottle opener. And I just had to pick out the notes that we wanted to play. And I said, y'all better hurry up and cut this thing because I ain't going to remember where I'm supposed to play.
Wow. See, that's amazing to me because that sounds very rehearsed. It sounds very intentional because it's so melodic. It's a very strong melody that's being played. So the fact that you say you didn't really know how to play that.
Right.
I mean, you're a horn player, so you understand.
We had a good ear.
Yes.
I had to go through it a couple of times. And
wow.
Thank goodness that we could punch in a little bit, here and there.
But that just makes... Yeah, but that was in the days of tape, too, so it wasn't as easy as it is with Pro Tools.
No.
But still, I mean...
I like to tell people, when I first got to Fame, I think David Briggs and Kerrigan and all that bunch left and went to Nashville. Mm-hmm. And Rick, I think, had heard of Barry. So he called Barry from Pensacola and said, come up here, I need a keyboard player. So Barry went on up, and I think about 3, 4, 5 months later, I can't remember exactly how long it was, Barry called me and said, you want to come up here to Muscle Shoals? And I said, what's happening? He said, Rick wants to put a horn section together. He's tired of paying Memphis horns, triple scale or whatever. He was paying them to come down to Muscle Shoals every time he has a session. I said, I'm on my way. So I stayed with Barry, I don't know, good long while, just hung around the studio.
So let me ask you this. You came up from where?
Pensacola, Florida.
So you're both from Pensacola?
Nope. We're from Birmingham originally.
Both you and Barry are from Birmingham?
Me and Barry both. We worked together.
See, I thought Barry was from Pensacola.
Okay. Barry's from Birmingham. We're all from Birmingham.
Okay.
And we had a TV show in Birmingham called Jerry Woodard and the Esquires on, I forget the name of the station anyway. Then we had a TV show up there. And then we were traveling all over the U.S., in groups back then when bands were popular, staying in a club a week at a time.
Right.
So we landed in Pensacola, and we stayed down there, I don't know, almost a year. Club owner wouldn't let us leave, and we were back and forth working out of Pensacola. And then Barry moved up here, and he called me, and I moved up and stayed with him for a while, and had 2 kids, married and 2 kids at the time. So I stayed with Barry when I first got up here and stayed over at the studio. I think I got on Rick's last nerve.
Now, at the studio, this is at Fame.
At Fame Studio, yeah.
Okay.
That's where we first started out.
And this would have been...
67.
So this is the formation of the horn section.
Right.
Right. Okay.
When the horn section first started getting together, I would just sit on the couch and watch and listen.
Was there auditions or was it...
No.
Just, hey, I know these guys, and you just call them and come in and play.
Get to know them. And I lived here, and Barry would get me in these sessions. And Rick said, you down here again today? I said, I'm going to be here till you hire me. I ain't going nowhere.
Hey, same thing basically that Dwayne Allman did.
Yeah. Dwayne stayed with me a little bit when he came up here. Yeah. He was out in a tent.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Dwayne was the most incredible guitar player. He was a little bit different on the different side, long hair. And down here, you didn't have long hair. I mean, here,
Yeah.
A lot between blacks and long hair didn't get along too well here. Well, just to tell you how Hey Jude came about, we had gone to lunch and we were cutting Pickett. So Pickett stayed at Fame and so did Dwayne. They got to talking and Dwayne said, Pick, I think you need to do a Beatles song. Pick said, No, man, don't come around here with that kind of stuff. I ain't doing no Beatles song. And then Dwayne started picking a little bit, on Hey Jude. And Piggy said, hey, wait a minute, And they just started fumbling around, not really planning to do this or anything. And Dwayne had such a lick, such a thing on there, man. They started putting it together. Everybody came back from lunch and cut Hey Jude.
And that's held as somewhat the birth of Southern rock.
Oh, man. Dwayne was incredible. He went outside. I remember this. Oh, yeah. Went outside and took a bottle and broke it and got the neck off of it. And that's where he was doing his slide stuff. And the guitar amps, they had to cover them with quilts because Dwayne wanted to, get that sound. He had to turn the volume up way back then.
Yeah, that's before you had all the guitar effect pedals that would do everything. You actually had to push the amp.
Had to push it. Had to cover it up.
There's still nothing like that sound.
You can't get it. And I still love the old tape machines.
Oh, yeah, me too.
They're so warm.
Well, I think it's more that it's the process in which we record rather than the medium. Yes, there is a sonic character, but I think people bring their A game a little more. It's not like you don't have playlists. You don't have if you miss a punch, you got to redo it.
Right.
You got to get it right. There's no peeling back the waveform and all of that kind of stuff like you can do in the computer. It's got to be right. So I think musicianship is lacking in a way because we have that crutch. And I love digital recording and mixing. I love it. I really do. So I'm not hating on it. But growing up in the Shoals, all of you guys, we just record like we're recording to tape. It's the process, I think, that really... The performance, I think, suffers a little bit when you have too many options.
Right.
I think creativity kind of gets I think we get a little more creative when we have boundaries sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if you've only got 24 tracks, you've only got 24 tracks. You got to figure out what to do with them.
When I started out up here, I think we had a mono track, so everything, you had to be a player. You had to play.
Everybody has to listen to the other players.
A lot of the records had little bitty mistakes in them, but you couldn't make a lot of mistakes because you couldn't go back and cover it up.
Those are some of my favorite parts of my favorite music, though, is you listen like Led Zeppelin, you hear the pedal squeak on the foot, I mean, that'll annoy you, but it's also part of the beauty of it. It's a real human playing a real instrument.
Right.
So it's something about that to me, I might have listened to a song 50 times, but the 51st time I hear somebody dropped something, and I feel like I'm in their world a little more.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It was more intimate cutting back then because you had to really listen to everybody else. I think this was before they even had the click track when we were playing. Roger Hawkins. I'm going to go see Roger today.
Oh, man.
Man, Roger, to me, is one of the greatest drummers in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, yeah. He has influenced so many people.
You can set your clock by him.
Yeah, and he didn't play to a click. He was the click.
He was the click.
Yeah.
And he didn't move either. That's
the way, you ever worked with Milton Sledge?
I have worked with Milton
He is that way. I think he's probably the closest that I've worked with anyway.
To Roger.
And I've never worked with Roger, so
everybody
I didn't have that
up
luxury.
here is great, without a shadow of a doubt, because there's not that many. But the ones that are here are most incredible musicians. And I was going to say that when I got up here, I was sitting on the couch trying to get a job and everything. And Rick said, man, how long are you going to be here? I said, as long as I have to. And finally, there came an opening. The Barry player from Memphis couldn't come down. And Rick said, you play Barry? I'd played Barry about 2 or 3 times in my whole life. I said, yeah, I play. And he said, I need you on the session tomorrow. I didn't have a Barry. And I knew Charles Stratford up at Muscle Shoals High School. So I ran up there. I said, Charles, I got a chance to play Barry. And I said, you've got one I can borrow? He said, yeah, get that right over there. So I took it.
Oh, wow.
And I practiced that afternoon. And then we cut, I think it was a Clarence Carter session that I was on.
Good grief.
And after,
that wasn't Patches, was it?
I'm not sure which one it was.
We were talking about Jerry Masters last night. He played bass on that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It might have been, I can't remember what all we did. Anyway, that gave me a chance to get in there. So I like to tell all the young people, up and coming musicians, don't give up. If you got to go, stay with it.
And that is so hard. It
is.
is. Because, I mean, you're what, sleeping on a couch in the studio or on the floor?
Sleeping on the couch, on the floor. And then I had 2 kids. I worked at Orkin, crawling under houses when I first got up here, spraying bugs. But I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do studio work. And then I sort of got fired from Orkin, and I went to work at Seagoing Boats. And I missed a couple of days because I was doing sessions.
That wasn't your career. That wasn't your future.
No,
musicianship was.
That was just a way to bring in some funds.
Exactly.
So when I got back to the Seagoing Boat plant after a couple of days, he said, you're going to have to make up your mind if you're going to work here or you're going to play old music.
That's probably the best thing anybody could have done for you, too.
And I said, go get my check. So I left, and then the session started rolling in, and we stayed with Rick, I think, through Capitol. It was the Fame Gang then.
Mm-hmm.
The Muscle Shoals horns didn't come into existence really by name until after we had left Rick. Then we started freelancing, and that's when we tagged on the Muscle Shoals horns name.
Before we get to that, let me ask you this. So you guys had started the Fame Gang. You're part of the rhythm section, okay?
Part of it.
All right. So this is around the time just about when David and Roger and all the guys are leaving,
Right
in the same couple years, right? So the formation of the Fame Gang's happening as all of this is going on, just to give this conversation context.
Right.
The brilliance of Rick was, one, finances. It was just getting expensive to have the Memphis horns come down here a lot.
Exactly.
One question I've asked Charles Rose is, what do you feel like differentiates the Muscle Shoals horns from, say, the Memphis horns or other horn sections? Because there are similarities, and I'm pretty sure Rick wanted what he was getting from Memphis at a lower rate, of course.
Right.
But one of the things I'm excited to talk with you about is the Barry sax is pretty loud in the mix in Muscle Shoals.
It is.
It's kind of it's got some fortitude to it. It's there.
It's a little bit different. What I did, I noticed back then when you record a song and you master it and everything, you got a little bit of bass in that comes on there, automatic. So what I did, I noticed all the Barry players from Memphis and around different places, their Barry sound sounded muddy to me. It didn't have the punch to it.
Yeah, it definitely punches.
And Rick wanted the punch, so I got a metal mouthpiece, a Berg Larson mouthpiece. I tried out a whole bunch of them, and this one sounded a little bit on sort of the teeny side, but it had the kick, it had the punch to it. So after we were, together and playing, Rick could EQ it a little bit if he wanted to, but it still had the big, fat Barry sound, the bass end sound, but it had the kick and the punch to it.
So would that have been compensating for the low end bump that it happens when it hits tape? Was that where that was kind of coming from?
Right.
So digitally, you might would use a different mouthpiece, maybe.
Right. Oh yeah.
Okay, because that's going to pick up the highs a little better.
Right.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. Because I was curious, because it's not a big difference in the two horn sections, and it's often difficult to tell who's doing what.
It is.
But there's that Barry sax. That's like one of the signature things when you talk about what is the Muscle Shoals sound. I often say it's kind of BS because everybody's been kind of a chameleon. Everybody has their style, but the same people playing on one record played on another, and they're two completely different things.
Right.
And you wouldn't know it's the same people. That's part of the genius of the musicianship here. That's really amazing. But like the kick drum and the bass guitar being a little hot and the Barry sax, those are things that are very signature to hear.
Right. And Roger playing on the backbeat.
Yeah, it's got it's not on the beat. It is. No. It's in time, but it's like it's sitting back just a little.
Tommy Dowd, he was down here one time and he was explaining about what we were doing. He said, y'all probably don't know what you're doing. But Atlantic Records, Tom Dowd, and Jerry Wexler, man, they were just most incredible. They knew what they were doing and how to get what they wanted. And Tommy said, here's what's happening. And he said, the beat, can be 5 miles long. In certain areas, Nashville or, someone play on the top of the beat.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the middle. And he said, Roger, you playing down on the bottom. You're not dragging. You're not rushing. You're not doing anything. You're down on the bottom. Mm-hmm. And that's the funk that they wanted on these.
It's feel.
It's a feel.
It's all about feel.
And I guess it's in the river. I don't know what it is in the water, they say.
Well, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and the song title was very about the Muscle Shoals area. And I was like, well, why did you write a song about the Muscle Shoals area and record it in Nashville? And I'm dear friends with a lot of people in Nashville. I'm not hating on that. And I love that thing. But I was like, why didn't you use Muscle Shoals players on this? It's 2 on the beat. It doesn't have any grease on it. It doesn't feel like what it should feel like. And he's like, I think I need to recut this. I was like, I think you do. So the formation of the Fame Gang, and you're with Rick, and then you guys decide to start doing freelance. Or is this
right?
Is this a decision, or is this something that just kind of happens organically? People call you guys and say, hey, we want you to play over here on this session. You guys weren't exclusive to Rick, were you?
We were.
Or you were?
When we first got here, we were exclusive.
So how did you manage that?
Well, what had happened, Rick paid us weekly. We didn't have session pay too much at that particular time when we first got up here. And after David and Roger and Barry and them left, that was right during that Aretha Franklin stuff that happened.
Yeah.
And so they left, and Jimmy was a little bit upset, a whole lot upset with the horns because we didn't go with them. And I said, Jimmy, we got to talk. I said, we didn't even know you guys were planning on leaving. And Rick knew this. So when they left, he immediately signed the horns to a contract. I think it was with either United Artists Capital. I can't remember which one at the time. So we were locked in there. We couldn't leave until after that contract was out. And then we figured we played on a lot of hit records at that time. We said, guys, we got to freelance and start on our own. We didn't know whether that was going to work or whether it wouldn't. But anyway, we went off on our own, and we started picking up sessions out of Memphis.
Now, how did you guys end up picking up sessions in Memphis when there's the Memphis Horns?
Memphis Horns were up there because they liked the little bit of extra funkiness, I guess, that we got. And we did sessions in Memphis. And then Memphis Horns, we did sessions with them also.
Yeah.
If we needed more than 4 horns, which what we had.
So you guys collaborated.
All the time.
This wasn't like a headbutting competition type of thing. It was that's really cool.
No, we were in no competition. Me and Wayne Jackson ran around together.
Because I always perceived that it was.
Yeah, Andrew Love,
which is a ill-informed perception, obviously.
Yeah, man, we were all good friends.
That's awesome.
And we worked together. Sometime if we didn't have any work, we'd go up there and play with them guys. Then when we needed more horns or 2 trumpets or something, we get Wayne in. Or Ben Cawley or some of those guys, and we all work together.
I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I want to go back to Harrison.
Okay.
And us talk a little bit about each of the guys. So you're Barry sax.
Barry.
And Harvey Thompson.
Harvey.
Is tenor alto. But he also plays Barry, too.
Oh, yeah. Harvey plays anything. Flute.
Yeah, Harvey's a monster.
Oh, he is.
He's amazing.
Man,
all you guys are. Charles Rose.
Charles.
Trombone. And he's the charts guy, writes the charts. He's a musical genius when it comes to that kind of thing.
I think one thing that sort of set us apart is that in the beginning, we saw a lot of the horn groups that come down and everybody would try to get their licks in. And when they do that, they're confusing the producer because a lot of time the producer don't know what he wants in the first place. And he's got 5 or 6 licks coming at him at one time, and he's trying to decide on the spot what he wants on his record.
Well, from a producer's standpoint, which I are one. It was like, well, do I want that lick on the trumpet? Do I want it on the trombone? Do I want it on the saxophone? I'm not sure.
Right.
It would be one of those. I like that lick, but I don't know what I want it on. Do I want it on the piano? As opposed to if it's on 4 or 5 different horns, I'm trying to decide which horn I want it on, or do I want it on the whole section? Do I want it on the trumpet and the saxophone? Or do I not want it on the horns at all? Do I want it on the background singers? Where do I want this lick? It's cool. If you guys decide that takes the decision off of the producer. So they're able to focus more on the song itself and not go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out. You would be deciding, I want this on the horns or I want it over here with vocals or what another instrument, keyboard, guitar or whatever, but you wouldn't be splitting up it would make the decision.
Yep.
Decision fatigue. That's
Having
what
to
I'm
pick with the
thinking
different
of.
licks,
Yeah.
So what we did that set us apart from a lot of the other horn sections, we sort of turned it into a business. I did all the bookings most of the time. Harrison was a genius at coming up with licks, funky licks. Charles is a genius. All you got to do is just hum a line and he'll write a whole score to it.
Oh man, he's
incredible.
Music theory. He's one of those guys that just knows theory really well.
Oh man, he does. So we had everybody assign different things to do.
Well, let's talk just briefly about Harrison because he's not living, and in honor of him, I don't know that I ever got the chance to meet him. Just tell us, you've spoken just a little bit about him, but tell us a little bit about him. He was trumpet, of course.
Harrison came in. Well, when we first started with the horn section, I worked with Aaron Varnell, Bowlegs Miller, Joe Arnold, and myself. And then after a while, when we first started putting the horn section together, Aaron Varnell knew Harrison. So he said, I know a trumpet player that we can get. So we got Harrison down here, and he was playing. Then Harvey is a Vietnam vet. Harvey was just coming back from Vietnam. And they all went, Harrison and Aaron and Harvey all went to school together at Tennessee State, music majors.
Yeah.
And so we got Harvey down. Then I think something happened. I forget what it was. And Rick had to let Aaron go. So here we are with me, Harrison, and Harvey. And so we added a trombone player for a while, a couple of years, when we were the Fame Gang. And then we had to let the trombone player go. We were just using 3 pieces then and overdubbing everything. I think Charles came down, was working with Stacy Goss and some of those guys at Broadway Sound. Somebody said, man, there's a trombone player, he's bad. He's over there working at Broadway. So I think me and Harrison, we ran over there and just sort of snuck in there to see what was going on. It was Charles. Jimmy Johnson said, man, y'all need to use him. I'm going to get him down. So we got Charles down. Then we got Charles to move from, after he graduated from Murray State. Charles went to Murray State. And so we got Charles in there. And that was the Muscle Shoals horns right there, right after we got Charles in there.
So once you guys got Charles, it was solidified. That was done. That was the group.
Hadn't been a change since then.
Man, that's amazing.
Harrison, oh man, he did, so much work. We just worked together. We played together. We went fishing one time. The only thing we caught was a coal. I think we got...
I've done that before.
We got sort of inebriated. So I took some fish home and told my wife, I said, man, we had a great time fishing. And she looked, and back then they used to price the fish. So this fish had $2 or something on there. She said, well, where did you catch this at? I said, what do you mean? She said, it's got $2 and something on this fish. She said, y'all ain't been fishing.
You hadn't fooled anybody.
No.
That's hilarious.
No, and told anybody. But Harrison was a mastermind. He was so good and he could play anything. He could hear parts just bang, just like that. And we'd be sitting in the studio working in the control room. We hadn't played a part yet. Harrison started humming a lick. And we said, yeah, that sounds good. And Charles said, okay, Ron, you take the 1. I'll take the 3rd. Or maybe he would take the 5th. Harvey, you take the 3rd, cap you on the 1. And we would do that. Nobody knew what we was talking about. So we'd hum down the lines like that, and then we'd play them in the control room a couple of times to make sure that we had them. And then we'd go out in the room, run it down once or twice, and then we cut. One thing in particular I remember, we were doing a session with Conway Twitty in Nashville.
That's cool. That's the one I was going to ask you about.
And Conway came in, and we all stood up out of respect. Hey, this guy, Conway Twitty.
It's Conway Twitty.
Are you kidding me? And he said, what are y'all doing? And we stand up, Mr. Twitty. He said, I'm Conway. He said, sit down. I come to hear you guys. He said, I've wanted you on my record for years.
Oh, wow.
He said, now I want you here. He said, I come to hear how y'all work. I've heard about it for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So
where was this session?
It was in Nashville, and I can't remember the studio that we were in. I can't remember the studio right offhand. And he gave us tickets to Twitty City and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He was just what a great human being. I remember that because that was sort of an honor for us to have, somebody of his caliber to come in there to hear us, what we're doing. So we asked him, did he have any particular lines or anything? He said, let me tell you something. He said, you guys have played on more hit records than I'll ever have. He said, you just do your thing. And if I hear something different, I'll let you know.
Well, I mean,
so
he's not wrong. I mean, that shows a lot of wisdom on his part because, I mean, that's why you guys were hired for the gig. I mean,
that's right.
You guys had played on probably more hit records than he had done at that point in time.
I don't know how many hits we played on, tons of them, but we had a really good track record on things that we did.
There's a couple projects I want to ask you about, if that's all right.
Okay.
Hot. You worked on that, right?
Worked on Hot with Terry Woodford. And
that was at Wishbone, right?
Clayton Ivey at Wishbone.
If that's the way you want it, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that. That's a cool record. Well, that may not be one that a lot of people my age are real familiar with, but
okay,
check it out. Guys, get on the internet.
It's a good
listen to that.
I don't remember a whole lot about that record. I remember we did cut it at Wishbone. Those girls were incredible.
Well, stuff at Wishbone that's where I interned in 2008.
Okay,
and that is a cool, funky little room.
It's a great sound out of that room.
Like almost the disco capital of the Shoals. And it's not, I bring that up because Wishbone isn't talked about near as much as a lot of the other places are. And it was very much, and still is, Billy Lawson owns it now, and very much still a happening thing.
Oh, it sounds great.
Yeah,
I heard some stuff yesterday. I was over there talking to Billy. He played me some things that he had done on Sammy Kershaw.
Oh, yeah.
And Clayton Ivey.
Oh, yeah. I recorded Clayton Ivey on a Eddie Martin, if you know him, record. He's doing piano on 2 songs and organ on another one. And we cut those at East Avalon.
Right.
Actually. And, oh, my goodness.
Clayton.
He's insane how good he is.
Talking about Clayton. Clayton was in Pensacola, Florida with us working.
Oh, was he?
And when Barry left and went to Nashville, then I called Clayton up. Clayton was in Pensacola, and Clayton came up. So Clayton was in the Muscle Shoals.
You guys were all interconnected before you ever got here.
We were.
That's amazing.
We were. I mean, Clayton, it's hard to beat Clayton, man.
Well, no, yeah. If you need anybody to do anything, of course, he's not limited to this, but the jazzy kind of thing, he can do that Bill Evans, Joe Sample kind of thing.
Oh, he'll scare you. And he can do that real simple Floyd Kramer stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Real simple country.
Oh, yeah. He is good.
He probably
he's also a producer. I mean, he's worked on not just playing piano and organ. He's, him and Bob Ray, bass player, from here. Bob's amazing. He played for Ray Charles, enough said.
Right.
I mean, Al Green, go down the list. They've been buddies from way back. They're funny to watch in the studio together because they're like little teenage kids just poking at each other,
They've done this stuff so long they can do it in their sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Just do a chart and they got it. And they work together. And most of the guys in town, all the guys in town have worked together at one time or another. And it's just like that family thing again. Man, we know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
They know what, one of the other musicians is going to do before they do it.
Yeah.
Because they sort of know their style and they say, hey, so it's automatic.
Yeah. And I always wondered what that was like till I started experiencing it. And I've worked with a lot of the guys in this town for a long time, like Will McFarland being one, just for an example. Mark Narmore is another one. He's known as a songwriter, but he's an incredible musician. I mean, you see those guys in the studio and it's like, I've lost count how many times I've recorded them. They're dear friends too. And Mark and I have written some songs and I mean, just incredible people on top of that. But it literally, you just kind of know what they're going to do. And it's a weird thing to experience. You can't explain it really. You just have to experience it.
You do. And you can't, there's no way to teach it.
No, you can't teach
and
that.
It's just a thing. Now, with the horn section, the phrasing is very important, that you breathe together and you tongue together and your phrasing is together.
Did you guys practice that or were y'all just that good? Or did it just happen?
It came together.
Wow. See,
we knew what we had to have. And Rick now, he said, wait a minute, man, we got to do that again. Somebody's a little bit out. with the phrasing or something wasn't quite together. It's got to be very, very precise.
Well, that's another thing that's very signature. The trumpet is very almost stabby sometimes, very short instead of, there's a lot of stuff you guys did that was sustained, but y'all had a lot of punchy, stabby horn parts, really quick.
Right.
And reverb be thrown on it, and it causes that reverb to react. And it's just it's a thing. You have to be precise to be that short with your notes.
You got to be.
You can get a little away with it a little bit if they're longer notes, but when it's just right on the nose.
And Charles
really
had perfect pitch. He still does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He amazes me with that.
He said, wait a minute, somebody's out of tune.
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yeah.
I said, Chucky, behave.
But he's right. He knows.
And if you wasn't together, Chuck could hear it.
Yeah.
So we'd have to go back and redo something and get it precise right there.
Yeah.
And we learned that over, a period of years, of course, of doing that. So it just came second nature to us because we knew what each other was going to do. And we knew where to stop it. And if it needed to be punchy or whatever, man, it was just right there. We were very fortunate.
Well, one thing, the Shoals sisters, Cindy Richardson Walker and Marie Louie, I've recorded them a lot. And the two of them together are a powerhouse. They're amazing, and they have perfect pitch.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I bring them up is oftentimes from a production standpoint, the background singers might do what would have been a horn line, but it might be better as vocals than a horn, or vice versa. It might be better as a horn line than a vocal. But oftentimes they might serve the same purpose. If it's not necessarily a feature in the song, it might be a kind of a bed vocal or something like that just kind of lays there in the song and supports the song. The fact that them as background singers are just so spot on and perfect with pitch to the point, and I don't mean this to sound how this is going to come out sounding, it's almost a little annoying, but it's, because it's like, let's go on. But it's like, no, back up. They're right. It's going to be better. Just hang on. We're going to go one or two more takes, and it's going to take an extra 5 minutes.
Right.
So just let them do their thing, and it's going to make the song.
Those girls are unbelievable.
Yeah, but I bring that up because the horns and the background singers often do similar parts.
Right.
And the pitch thing. And it sounds like you guys work together. Speaking of phrasing, breathing, because you play a horn with your mouth, singing.
Right.
Breathing is important. And I've talked with Will McFarlane about this too. And he's mentioned that when he's playing notes, he'll make sure he's breathing when he's playing.
Right.
As if he's playing a horn. So his phrasing is right. It just works better. And you're not just, notes
doing
all the time, just noodling.
Yeah.
You're being purposeful in your phrasing. So breathing, even if you're not playing a horn or singing, if you're playing a drum or a guitar or whatever, phrasing is very important.
And one thing that Jerry Wexler taught us was, like you're saying, the breathing. He said, you're putting life into the song when you're breathing. Yeah. And he told me, because when he first came down, I first met Jerry, I was trying to play, impress.
Well, we all have done that.
And Jerry said, Ronnie, with that New York accent, Ronnie, don't play everything you know in 30 seconds. He said, I cut hit records. He said, the people that buy my records don't know anything about all that stuff that you're playing.
And that's true.
Simple. He said, I cut simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Simple records. If you listen to all those records back then, there was space. He said, leave space in it. He said, what I want you to do is become part of the record. Get inside the record. If musicians can understand what that means. Get inside of it. Be part of it. Listen to what the vocalist is trying to present. The vocalist is trying to say. If you can't be a part of that and complement that, then don't play nothing.
Well, amen to that.
Yeah, he
I mean, that sounds a little harsh, but no, it's not. Because it's what serves the song.
That's right.
It's like I played some piano and some percussion on a song last week, and I talked with my friend in Nashville who's a mix engineer, and he said, yeah, I muted that. I said, okay. I wasn't all in my feelings about it.
No.
Because I'm like, you know what? I really think that needed to be muted anyway. We did it and I really didn't even want to play percussion on it because I was just like, I don't think this needs it. He's like, well, I'd rather have it than and not need it than not have it and need it. And I was like, hey, let's do it.
Exactly.
But it's just like, it didn't serve, what I played did not serve the song. The mix was too dense. When you put it in there, you didn't really hear it anyway. And it just muddied up the song. And when you simply pushed mute on it, not doing anything else in the song sounded better. So it's just like you did some magical thing and all he did was push mute on me. So I guess that's the trick to recording, push mute on me. Let's move forward to some projects.
Okay.
I have right here, of course, you guys in podcast land can't see this, but I'm holding one of my favorite records, vinyl, the 33 1/3, Joe Cocker's Luxury You Can Afford. We were just talking about this out in the lounge, and this is one of my favorite Joe Cocker records. I think it may, I don't know, it's up there with his best. I don't know if I'm going to say it is his best because he's got several records I love, but I may just go out on a limb and probably say it's my favorite record of his. I heard it through the grapevine. If that was the only song on here, I'd be all right with that. You said this was one of your favorite records you worked on.
I love that record. I listen to it all the time. How that happened was, I'll tell what I can remember of it. They had cut it, I think, a lot of it up in New York. And Hank Crawford and all those musicians up there did it. I can't remember if it's not on Atlantic. What label is that?
Well, I'm looking real quick. Of course, Jerry Masters was involved in engineering at Criteria Recording Studios in Miami. Of course, Barry Beckett.
Well, that had to be with Atlantic then.
Yeah.
And on the horns part of it, I mean, they had some of them bad guys playing up there in New York, Hank Crawford and a whole bunch of those guys. But they didn't like it. It wasn't funky enough for Joe, for what they were looking for. So they booked us on it and came down here, and we did it. And Joe stayed with me for a couple of days.
What was that like?
Well,
that had to be a trip.
He's a little different. And if I can tell a little story about Joe, and he left me a note, and I'll tell you about that.
You don't still have that, do you?
I still have that note he wrote me, and it's framed.
I was going to say it would have to be.
Oh, yeah. He came to the house, and we had been having quite a few adult beverages after we got through with the sessions. My neighbor had a wind duck outside, and Joe found my little pellet gunner 22. I can't remember what he had. And he went outside. He was feeling good, too. And he shot up the wind duck and shot one of the wings off of that thing. And boy, my neighbor pitched a fit. So I had to go buy another wind duck and put out there. And Joe left a message. He wrote it on an envelope, and it said, sorry about the something or another. And he said, it was a pleasure being with you and staying at your house, Joe Cocker.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I'll never get rid of that. My daughter has it.
I couldn't.
And, it was a great time. Joe was a little bit different, with his arm movements and everything when he sung. But, man, he's one of my favorite artists. And that record, after we did it, we took a lot of time with it to get it right, to do better than the guys did in New York.
And that was done here in this building, wasn't it?
I think it was,
and
yes.
We are I'm in Heartel Studios right now with Ronnie Eades in my studio, which is in the Cypress Moon Studios building, which was Muscle Shoals Sound 2.0 from 1978 till 2005. And in 85, Malico bought it. Mm-hmm. And everybody still operated under the Muscle Shoals Sound moniker. But I've mentioned that several times on this podcast, but I want to make sure everybody understands where we're talking about location-wise. I'm looking at the credits right now, and I want to make mention. It says that arranged by Harrison Calloway Jr. Heard it through the grapevine. That's awesome. Yeah. It's also mentioning Barry Beckett. I think I mentioned him, but I want to make sure I did. Steve Melton and Greg Ham, who were both amazing engineers.
Oh, they were.
And Electra Sound Records, and it was Muscle Shoals Horns appear courtesy of.
We were with Ariel at the time.
Yeah, there was C. Saint Studios, New Orleans was involved. Criteria with, of course, Jerry Masters was involved in Miami. But anyway, I just was looking at the credits. We were trying to figure things out, so I figured I'd just go on ahead and mention.
There were some bad boys on there.
Man, Billy Preston's on this thing. Yeah. So, of course, if anybody doesn't know who Billy Preston is, shame on you.
That's right.
But use the power of Google. He's the black gentleman on top of the roof with the Beatles. Is one of the most amazing keyboard players that's ever walked the planet. So do yourself a favor and educate yourself on him.
That is a great record. I don't know how it sold, never did hear, but that was a great record. It's one of my favorite records.
It's one of mine for sure.